About 100 million years ago, during the Mesozoic era, I posted the last video on this channel talking about the Koenigsegg Jesko. In all modesty and humility, the video was incredible, reaching more than 60k views. But it had one flaw, the AI voice. Today, however, I'll do my best to deliver a video that's up to the last, but more authentic, with my poor English as a learner. I hope you enjoy it. Have you ever stopped to think about why many cars don't have names but codes? Like 720S, Ford 88 Pista, T50 and many others. The problem is that a name brings personality to the car and creates a lot of expectation. What can you expect, for example, from the McLaren Senna? If it bears the name of one of the greatest drivers of all time, it must also be one of the best cars of all time. And if that expectation isn't met, things start to get strange. But Koenigsegg has gone very bold with the name Jesko. In fact, this isn't the first time it has put a name on its cars. However, unlikely Gemera, which means to deliver more, or Agera, which means to act, or Regera, which means to reign, Jesko doesn't have such a simple meaning. Jesko is the name of Christian's father, Jesko von Koenigsegg, and as much as you might find the meaning of this name to be courageous, that's not enough, because Jesko tells a story. In fact, he was a crucial part of the building the brand, as he was present at the most challenging part, the beginning. What began as a child's dream for Christian has now become the dream of many automotive enthusiasts, all thanks to his father, who trusted him and helped him to take the first steps. Putting his father's name on one of the most beautiful, complex and brilliant works of the engineering and technology is a feat for few, and I imagine that not even Christian himself expected to be able to honor his father in this way. To give you an idea of the weight this name carries, the Koenigsegg Jesko came to compete for the position of the fastest production car in the world, which has remained intact since 2019. That year, Bugatti took the Chiron Supersport 300 Plus to a speed of 489.4 km/h in the average between the two directions. The most interesting thing is that this broke the 2017 record set by the Koenigsegg with the Agera RS, which reached 447 km/h. But it gets even more interesting. After all, the Agera RS came to break a 2010 record held by the Bugatti Veyron Supersport, which reached 431 km/h. In other words, since 2010, Koenigsegg and Bugatti have been fighting for the throne of the fastest production car ever, and the Jesko is the newest candidate from the Swede with the brightest head ever.
Hi everyone, Christian from Koenigsegg here. I'm very excited to show you all the pre-production Koenigsegg Jesko.
But is this car really all that? In my humble opinion, and you know it's extremely important, it's all that and then some. After all, it's not just here to break top speed record, so much so that it has two versions, the Attack and the Absolute, but we'll get to that later. I often say that hypercar performance is based on three pillars: power, weight and aerodynamics. Because there is no point in having 1000 horsepower and weighing 2 tons. Just as there is no point in trying to put 1000 horsepower in a 700 kg vehicle shaped like a shoebox. And of course, it doesn't matter how light and aerodynamic the squirrel is if it doesn't have 700 horsepower. And because Koenigsegg's engineering team knows this very well, the Jesko has been optimized to the maximum in every detail. One of the reasons I love Koenigsegg is that it is an innovative brand, and it innovates in ways that you just don't expect. It reminds me a bit of the McLaren legacy in Formula 1. After all, half of the rule book is dealt with crazy ideas from McLaren engineers, and I think that's amazing. Similarly, Koenigsegg engineers always find some way to be different. The Regera, for example, is a completely different car to anything else imaginable, because theoretically, the more gears a car has, the better. However, Koenigsegg thought otherwise and decided to remove all the gears. And yet, this resulted in a world record-breaking car, which broke the same record twice. In 2019, it did the 0 to 400 to 0 km/h in just 31.49 seconds, and in 2023, it did the same thing but in 28.81 seconds. Now, at the launch of the Jesko, they decided to do the opposite, adding more gears. This gave rise to the LST gearbox or light-speed transmission, with 9 gears and 7 clutches, something completely innovating the automotive industry. Briefly, instead of creating 9 pairs of gears to create the 9 gears, they made 6 pairs separated in 2 groups. This way you can combine 1 pair of the first with 1 pair of the second, generating 9 gears, but in a much more compact, lightweight and efficient way compared to the DCT system or dual clutch transmission. In fact, gear changes in the LST happens very quickly, as each valve can be open or closed in just 2 milliseconds, but as unbelievable as it is, that's not the biggest advantage of this gear shift. While DCTs only offers instantaneous change between adjacent gears and especially to the next one, the LST can jump from 7th to 2nd for example without going through 6th, 5th and so on, that is, without following the sequence. Based on this, Koenigsegg created the U-Pod system, which stands for Ultimate Power on Demand. Let's suppose that you're in a high gear, just enjoy the scenery, and decide to accelerate. Just activate the U-Pod with 2 clicks on the gear shift lever and the on-board computer will calculate the perfect gear for your speed and engage it instantly. You can shift for example from 8th to 4th in just milliseconds, because as I said, the LST gearbox don't need to follow the sequence. The main factor that allows Koenigsegg to be so revolutionary is that it produces almost every part of the car in-house, rather than outsourcing the production as many brands do today. This allows not only innovations but also customized parts, such as piston heads with brand shield or connecting rods with the name print on them, but above all, much more precise control of the powertrain's behavior. Since the engine, gearbox, exhaust system and all the softwares are made by Koenigsegg itself, the end result is much more harmonious and efficient. This has, for example, allowed the car to be homologated all over the world, something that is very difficult for cars with this level of performance due to various factors, such as the emissions. We're talking about a 5-liter twin-turbo V8 with a red line of 8,500 rpm, capable of producing 1600 horsepower with 85 ethanol. The torque can reach up to 1500 Nm, but 1000 is already available from 2700 rpm, all thanks to electric compressor that charges the turbochargers during low revs to avoid turbo lag. All this power, however, is only achieved with the E85 optional, because with the gasoline version, the engine reaches only 1280 horsepower. But as much as 320 horsepower less is a big difference, this car won't stop being fun, because almost 1300 horsepower is still a lot, and this car is very light, weighing just 1390 kilos with all the fluids and a full tank. This creates a power-to-weight ratio of 1.08 kilos per horsepower on the least powerful version, and that brings me to the second pillar of performance, the weight. As stated earlier, the Jesko weighs just 1390 kilos with all fluids and a full tank, which is an interesting contrast with its main rival, the Bugatti Chiron Supersport 300 Plus, which weighs almost 2 tons, 1978 kilos with all fluids. The point is that the Jesko has the same power with an engine 3 liters smaller, with half as many pistons and half as many turbochargers. In other words, Koenigsegg has made a much more optimized car than Bugatti. And that is what makes my eyes light up, because much more interesting than simply having huge numbers is having smaller numbers with more results. Sometimes less is more. The weight cut is present everywhere, from the engine, which weighs just 189 kilos, to the wheels, which are lighter than the tires. Yeah, the front wheels, which are rim 20, weigh just 5.9 kilos, and the rear wheel, rim 21, weighs 7.7 kilos, and they are lighter than the Michelin tire Pilot Sport Cup 2R that equip the car. As you might have guessed, these wheels are made of carbon fiber with air core technology developed by Koenigsegg. This makes the wheel lighter and more resistant. But of course, the use of carbon fiber doesn't stop at the wheels. It extends to the monocoque in a mix with aluminum and the body panels along with Kevlar. In addition, of course, there is weight reduction in the integration of components such as the gearbox, which is connected directly to the crankshaft without a flywheel. The point that most differentiates the two versions of the Jesko is aerodynamics. While the attack focuses on generating a lot of downforce to be efficient on the track when cornering, the Absolut seeks to have the minimum downforce and drag coefficient to be better at high speeds on the straight. The main feature of the Jesko attack is this huge airfoil that either you love or hate, but it's impossible to ignore. After all, it's only not bigger than my mustache. And my biceps. Whether this wing is ugly or beautiful is anyone's guess, but the fact is that it's very efficient. This airfoil is an evolution of the one used on the Koenigsegg 121, which is very evident from the weight supported. The idea of holding the airfoil from above instead of from below is based on the idea that most of the downforce produced by a wing on a car is produced by the underside of the wing, and placing support there would make the air more turbulent and consequently the airfoil less efficient, so leaving this area free is much more logical. But since downforce is a double-edged sword that can be very good or very bad depending on the scenario, they made this huge wing movable, so you can increase the angle of attack to help with braking for example, or decrease it to increase stage line speed. In addition, at the front there is the largest front-splitted ever fitted Koenigsegg, air vents over the wheel housing and a sort of S duct. Unfortunately, this duct makes it impossible to install the roof of the car under the hood as in the Regera, but this is a necessary evil, because when you add it all up, the Jesko attack can generate 1000 kg of downforce at 290 km/h, reaching a maximum of up to 1400 kg. And that is 200 kg more than the McLaren Solus GT, which has a body that looks much more like a racing car and much closer to Formula 1 than the Jesko. So what Koenigsegg did here is really impressive. However, the Jesko Absolut is different, completely different. In aerodynamic terms, it's actually the opposite. The change starts with minor details, such as a smaller front splitter, removal of all the things scattered along the side of the car, a closing of the front wheels air vents, or even the closing of the S duct. And it extends to more apparent issues, such as a kind of cover for the rear wheels, or of course the replacement of the huge foil with things that brings more stability at high speeds. All this meant that the car produces almost 10 times less downforce, reaching a maximum of 150 kg. It's worth remembering that the more downforce a car produces, the more drag it has, and to increase top speed, the idea is to have the lowest possible drag coefficient, and Koenigsegg has once again done a great job, achieving an impressive 0.278 of drag coefficient. Just as a comparison, the Bugatti Chiron Supersport 300 Plus has a drag coefficient of 0.36, which is almost 30% more than the Jesko Absolut. With all three pillars firmly in place, Jesko has already started breaking records, from track time records to straight line acceleration. At the famous Laguna Seca track in the United States, he's the fastest, completing a lap in 1 minute and 24 seconds. Similarly, he's the fastest on the Gotland Ring circuit in Sweden, completing a lap in 2 minutes and 56 seconds, which is more than 7 seconds faster than the previous record. All these records were set with the Koenigsegg Jesko attack, but Absolut isn't lagging behind. On the contrary, despite not having active aerodynamics or a hybrid system like the Regera, the Jesko Absolut accelerated from 0 to 400 km/h and braked back to 0 in 27.83 seconds, setting a new record. More recently, it also broke the record for the production car top speed over a half mile, reaching almost 360 km/h. That in itself is impressive, but in the video you can see that the acceleration from 0 to 100 km/h is slower than 100 to 200. How crazy is it? What's missing now is the long-awaited top speed record, which some people doubt if it will ever be achieved. I would say Koenigsegg can do it, but I would also say that deep down it doesn't make that much difference. In fact, knowing that a car is capable of going over 500 km/h, which is practically half the speed of sound, is incredible. But let's be honest, how many Jesko Absolut buyers will repeat this with their cars? However, using Jesko on track day is more interesting, and there are countless tracks around the road where you can use the car in its full potential. Look at the animation of Christian driving Jesko attack. For me, this is the proof that top speed is an extra factor in hypercars, and the driver experience is the most important thing. Proof of this is the sales success of the GM850, the today's most driver-centric car. If you want to get to know it a bit more, take a look at the first video on this channel. But what about you? If you had $4 million, would you buy a Jesko? Whatever the answer, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if so, please subscribe. See you next time.